Chapter 3. History told in Kumo Revolution. In the tomb of Nazarick, Demiurge had just returned with his new ally and saw that Lord Ainz was gone. Meaning that he was most likely in Kumo and waiting for his moment to turn their country into another ally. He was eager to see this come to fruition, while in the lands before, they managed to conquer them with ease, and with the people having chakra here he was expecting a greater challenge as a whole. Sadly, it is for not considering they are immune to most jutsu, and only the strongest can pull something off to possibly hurt them in this case. Looking to Fu, he realized that he might be jumping the gun a bit, considering she and some of the other beast containers could give the Pleiadians trouble in battle, but they would not trouble the Guardians. His powers could neutralize theirs, and he knew that compared to Albedo, most of the Guardians alone were powerless to fight her in a straight-up fight. But the strength of the tomb is for another time. He turned to Fu and said, "It would seem the master is out still and won't be back for a few days. Please make yourself familiar with the tomb. I will have CZ show you around and inform the others about your presence." Fu looked at the silent maid and nodded her head with a bright smile. "Cool, but won't you show me around as well?" He shook his head with a smile. "No, unfortunately, I have some other business to deal with at this time and need to gather information. Please remember that you are being watched and do not aggravate the warriors in the tomb. Other than that, if you meet some of the other workers they will show you how to care for the tomb as a whole. Clear?" She bowed her head. She was arrogant and had her own swagger when it came to fighting, but she was not stupid to think she was unbeatable. More in the sense she knew that fighting this man, who slaughtered the shinobi and the maid, would be her death. Especially since Jime is telling her that he is stronger than even the Bijuu, and that if someone is controlling and commanding him, then it is someone to fear. She agreed with this assessment and agreed to try and play ball. Demiurge watched as the girl left with CZ, and he used his ring of Ainz gown and teleported to the lower levels of the tomb. Entering the caverns he saw a giant slug-like creature, white in the skin with some blue markings and having 6 tails behind it. This was the 6 tails and considered the strongest poison users of its family and the power to create and use bubbles. Ainz had managed to separate the man from his tailed beast and free it in the cavern. When asked why he didn't do it for Shukaku, he explained that Tanuki was too far gone to be saved and that it was better to create a new one in the form of Gaara, who he knew would use the powers he was given more responsibly. "Seiken, is it?" Demiurge asked the tailed beast. "Yes, demon, what can I do for you?" Seiken asked, turning its attention to Demiurge. "Just checking in to make sure everything is as you required," Demiurge said. "Indeed, I love the quiet of the caverns and the way that this place seems to be endless. I would love to live down here forever and never bother with the mortal world again," Seiken said happily as Demiurge nodded. "Fascinating, but I had a question for you and about the tailed beast as a whole. Lord Ainz requested me to do this, and I'm happy to gather the information from you," Demiurge said as Seiken nodded. "Very well, what is your question?" Seiken asked as Demiurge looked at the tailed beast. "The tailed beast, where do you go when your host dies?" he asked, bringing a hand to his chin. "The Netherworld, a place that exists between this realm, hell, and heaven. Essentially, we are not allowed to leave the Netherworld and enter the other realms unless it is for us to be reborn in the human world so that we could be used as a weapon again." He released some of his aura, causing the cavern to shift a bit, but Demiurge remained still. "Interesting, is it possible that the Kyuubi is there?" Demiurge inquired. "Sadly, I would think so, but I feel there are complications with his return. From what I was able to see of the Netherworld, he has half of his power, making him not as strong as he used to be. At the same time, he is restricted there in this world without a means to escape. So while most of the time we are reborn, he is not allowed to pass back into the land of the living," Seiken explained as Demiurge nodded. "I see, so without a means of bringing him back to full power he can't return to this world, right?" Demiurge asked. "Yes. It's a sad thing considering he was father's favorite child and the one that was looking over us when we were all growing up. What's worst is that bastard Hamura and his cursed line." Seiken cursed as Demiurge raised a brow. "Who?" he asked. "Apologies, I forgot not everyone knows the history of how the world came to be filled with chakra," Seiken said, only for Demiurge to wave it off. "It's fine, but could you please continue with who this man was and why you cursed him?" Demiurge said as Seiken nodded. "Of course, in the beginning, there was a woman named Kagaya Tsutsuki who was known for her tremendous power. Even back then she was considered a goddess given human flesh and with power that made her stronger than anyone around her while she was living underneath the great tree. During her time she was attacked by many invaders, killing one of her dear friends at the time, forcing her to make a deal with the tree. For the use of its power and to imprison those that destroy this world, she would be given the means to use that power, but would be required to return it in the future. So the deal was struck, and all the warlords were imprisoned by Kaguya, who shortly afterward had 2 sons, and realized they both had the power of the tree in them. She went to the tree to beg for forgiveness for her travesty, and it told her that she was forgiven, but the power must be returned. As such, the children must return the power to the tree when the time comes. Sadly, not all went well after the children discovered the bodies of the people in the tree and how she imprisoned them. Hagoromo, instead of fighting her, confronted her with this information, and she explained what she planned to do. He accepted it and promised to help her. But her other son Hamura was not as understanding, seeing the world as a land of promise and potential, and demanded that she release them and allow him to use chakra to help unite the world. Hagoromo understood this approach, but at the same time explained that this could be something that backfires on them as well. But it was too late. He disrupted his mother's chakra, forcing her to turn into the Juubi, and then having her go on a rampage. The brothers fought it out, but he was killed by Hagoromo before forcing himself to seal his mother into his body. From there he learned that the tree was displeased with what Hamura did, and learned that he already sired children of his own, and that they were already blessed with the knowledge of chakra. Seeing nothing could stop this inevitable problem, the tree forgave Hagoromo, but foretold the end of the era that is to come, either by peace or by destruction. Soon he sired 2 children that eventually gave birth to the Uchiha clan, Senju, and Uzumaki family. These 3 families had their issues, but nothing extensive. That was until after Madara came into the picture. Seiken explained as Demiurge seemed enraptured by the story. Yes, Lord Ainz told me that it was Madara who used the Kyuubi before to attack the hidden leaf, and the darkness came from him was greater than any human in history, Demiurge said, only for the tailed beast to shake its head. That is where you are wrong. Madara was not as evil as people made him out to be. Did he kill people in the clan wars? Yes. Did Hagoromo's oldest son Indra become a Douch? Yes, but Madara was one of the few good Uchiha that came from the clan, thanks to him having the power of the Manjaku Sharingan. It was his dream to unite the world in peace, and so he and Hashirama were friends because of this similar goal and dream. Sadly, this would not last forever, for his brother Izuna Uchiha was the one that corrupted the clan. Seiken said, shaking his head. Corrupted a whole clan? How is that possible? Demiurge was intrigued. It would seem that history has been distorted by those in power, and they were portraying their greatest enemies, but in reality, they were the ones that went against the status quo. I know it is hard to believe, but he managed to implant the whole idea of Uchiha superiority, and the idea that their clan was to sit at the top, unchallenged by all. Sadly for him, his demise came soon afterward when he was injured and his brother lost his eyesight. Knowing of his treacherous deeds and the evils he committed while he was trying to build peace, he, Madara, took his brother's eyes to fix his own, and swore that he was no longer part of his family. This had the creation of Konoha coming forward, but the people voted for Hashirama to become the first Hokage. While he was upset about this, he congratulated his friend and promised to support him in their dream of this world. But it would not be long until Izuna rose from the ashes with his own Sharingan, after taking them from another member of the clan, and whispering how Madara was not worthy of them, and was more Senju than Uchiha. Madara insisted that he was doing what was best for the clan, but unfortunately it was not received, and he was banished and forbidden from being the clan head. Izuna was not in any condition to lead at the time, so he left the clan, and to spite his brother one more time, he summoned a Kyuubi where they fought on top of the fox, and he managed to be killed by his brother. Sadly, the damage was done, and Hashirama thought he turned traitor, thanks to those who hated Madara before, and were now out for blood. He was defeated by Hashirama, but the Senju let him live after realizing that he was not the one responsible, but kept it to himself in fear of having the village turn on him and his clan. Madara played the part of the evil warlord and was written into the books as such. Seiken told the demon. Fascinating history. What happened to Madara and Izuna? What led to Konoha becoming the way it is now? Demiurge asked again. Madara retired to the land of Yuzu where he settled down with a Uzumaki woman, and they had a child, and soon grandchildren from then on. He died of old age, but had his body and eyes sealed in Yuzu to preserve it. You might be able to find it since you are sitting on the city as we speak. The children came down the line and had a child named Kushina who then mothered the child known as Naruto. Seiken said. Demiurge was shocked. His lord and master was the descendant of the Madara Uchiha. This meant he had the power of the Uchiha clan in his veins when he was alive and might be able to take Madara's body for himself and use the eyes as well. However, his eyes were already stronger than Madara's eyes, so there was no point in taking them, but he might want them if he ever brought them back from the dead. What about Konoha? The slug sighed, knowing this was all mixed history, but it was better to be told than hidden any longer. The reason they never told anyone, yes, all the tailed beasts knew the truth, was purely the fact that they knew that no one would believe them. That dates back to when the second Hokage appointed Hiruzen as the third Hokage in this case. From what I gathered, a man named Danzo was starting to slowly corrupt the country and turning it from a peace-loving nation into a nation that was clouded by arrogance and desire to be the strongest by killing and enslaving everyone else. Sadly, this would be a failure if he continued down his path on his own, so he took shinobi with talent and made them into his root division, thus undermining the Hokage until he was officially pushed into the shadows. Sadly, the council was causing more trouble for him over time, and with the war coming and Yuzu being gone from the previous war, things were not looking good for him. At the same time, Minato was on the rise, and after being appointed as Hokage, he was planning with the blessing of the Fire Daimyo to disband the council and reform it at a later time, and the same point Anzo and his allies routed out. But with his death and Hiruzen forced back into the limelight, it never happened. Seiken explained as Demiurge sighed. How sad, the man that birthed our lord is truly worthy of respect. Demiurge said. Yes, but unfortunately it was thanks to the clan sired by Himura, the Hyuga. They are part of the corruption thanks to their need for power and to prove they are superior. Seiken added in the end. Demiurge nodded his head. Well, I thank you for the information, and now I must be off. He left the slug to deal with his tunnel exploring and eventually arrived at the throne room where he saw Albedo, who was going through some paperwork and sighing at a picture of their lord in his human form. He sighed. He was not going to love interrupting her moment. Kumo. Ainz was walking through the village with Zessie at his side. They had just arrived in the village and noticed things were bleak. Everyone was either looking at each other and were waiting for something, or some people were glaring at the posters on the walls, displaying the former Raikage, B, and Yujito, stating they are wanted for a reward. Ainz sighed. People in the village were looking at him due to his outsider status and his ally, but she was being eyed like eye candy. Ainz was ready for anything, but he knew that causing a scene would do no one favors. After wandering around the village, Ainz managed to trace the chakra of the former Raikage, but before they could reach him, 3 Jonins appeared in front of them and smirked. You know, new guy, there is a toll in this village. You have to pay to stay here every day. But I'm sure your friend there could pay off both of your debts if she comes with us. The Jonin said, leering at Zessie, only for her to frown at this comment. You are not worthy of touching me, weakling, let alone being in the presence of my master. Be gone before I turn you into a smear on the ground. This enraged the Jonin, and one approached them with kunai out. Know your place, bitch. If we tell you to take a pounding, you better get yourself ready for it, got it? Ainz frowned but didn't bother interfering because Zessie could easily take these fools. In this world, she was equivalent to a Bijuu, so this would be considered overkill for him. Fools. Without warning, her side swung around and made a complete 360 before returning to her place. Within seconds, the men exploded in a pile of gore, leaving nothing standing in their place. Ainz sighed. What an annoyance. He muttered with a shake of his head. Indeed, Ainz-sama, they are unworthy of gazing upon your glory and presence, let alone seeing me. After all, she turned to him with a blush on her face and her eyes dilated. I'm your sole property, and you are the only person who has the right to do naughty things to me. After hearing those words, Naruto's sweat dropped. Right, let's keep moving. The resistance should be nearby. Out of the shadow, Naruto saw a girl with golden eyes and dark skin smiling at them. You're right about that, buddy. She found a scythe at her neck and froze in fear. He is not your buddy. Do you understand that? Zessie shouted while Karui sweated like crazy. Sure thing, please put that away, I'm not your enemy right now. Zessie glared slightly before removing her weapon, causing the scared teen to release a breath of air. Okay then, listen, you want to meet Lord A? Follow me then. Ainz followed behind the dark-skinned girl with Zessie keeping her kai at minimum, not wanting this hussy to steal her lord from her while she was standing next to her. While she is not busty like some of the other women in the tomb, but she was sure her status was high enough that she was considered one of his favorites over the maids. Why are you taking us to your leader? Ainz asked as Karui smirked. Let's just say anyone that kills those assholes that harass people on the order of the current rakeage is okay in my book. I could care less for assholes like them, and you doing them earned you an audience with Lord A. She said cockily. Interesting. What are the plans to take back the village? He asked as she frowned. There is no plan. At this point we have nothing. We could kill the rakeage and the traitors that allied with him, but unfortunately that would only mean that the lightning Diamo would just come down on us more and put one of his men in his place. Karui said solemnly. I see. Naruto, Zessie, and Karui finally arrived at a hidden entrance behind a stand and walked down underground, where they ran into a group of people sitting around a training. Most were wearing marked-out headbands of the village, showing they no longer consider themselves part of Kumo, but loyal to A. Speaking of the man, he was sitting at a round table with his hair in dreads and wearing a pair of green pants and golden bracers. Next to him was a man wearing a white outfit, wearing sunglasses and carrying at least 8 swords on his body. At the same time, he is wearing what Naruto could guess was sandal boots on his feet, a white headband with the marking of a bull on his shoulder, and an octopus if he got his kanji right. To the left of A was a teen with long blonde hair braided up and with some prayer beads in her hand, and next to her was another bob haircut blonde with large breasts and a well-developed womanly figure. Lord A.I. brought some allies. I looked at the teen and his younger friend and could sense their power. They were strong, stronger than anyone he ever sensed, and his senses were telling him that they were even stronger than what he thought they were. Meaning he had no idea how powerful they really were in this case. From his evaluation, he was sure the girl was weaker than the guy, but they were powerful in their own right either way. Nice to meet you. These are my allies. B, my brother, and the container of the 8 tails, Yujiro the container of the 2 tails, Samui, and Irui. I said as Ainz looked over the group next to A. You. Nice to meet you, fool. Naruto's sweat dropped when he saw A hit B on the head for his actions. Sorry about him. Nice to meet you, Yujiro said, annoyed at her fellow container. Cool to meet you, Samui said as Zessie glared at her and Yujiro. Hey, Darui said as Naruto nodded his head. I'm Ainz and this is my partner Zessie. Don't let her size fool you, she is powerful in her own right. Ainz gestured to his partner, who blushed at both the praise and hearing him call her partner. Yujiro scoffed, but then felt Nibi smashing against her brain. Idiot, who are you scoffing at? This no, this monster. He is the strongest in this entire room. Nibi said, scared. What are you talking about, Nibi? He can't be that good. Yujiro asked, confused about how her tailed beast was acting. He is a kitten, and believe me, even me outside the seal would not help. I can tell you for a fact this man could thrash me and Hachibi with ease. Nibi said grimly as Yujiro looked shocked. So you are saying there is no way for us to beat him if we fight him? Yujiro asked in slight fear. Exactly, and that is the same thing with her. That little girl is dangerous as well. Her power speaks and it is telling me not to fuck with her. If I were you though, I would want to bed that man now. He is the most alpha male person in the world. Nibi said through perverted giggles. Nibi? Yujiro shouted through their mental link. Yujiro was blushing from the implications, while B had a similar conversation with the Hachibi. But Hachibi was warning him not to piss off this guy because of the raw power he has. Well, now that introductions are out of the way, why are you here? I asked as Ainz smirked. I'm here seeking to help you with your problem in exchange for an alliance, he said while A raised an eyebrow. What do you mean? Even if we overthrow that idiot on the throne, there is no way we would be able to take the village back from the lightning Diamo. He controls everything that goes on in this country. As said as Ainz laughed slightly. Leave that fool to me, I have someone in mind to deal with him. There is no doubt in my mind he could easily crush that fool and his so-called army. Ainz said confidently. Very well, but without him or someone from his family, we will not be able to keep our country afloat for long. As said grimly as Ainz's face gained a smile. Like I said, don't worry, as soon as he is dead, and so is everyone that serves him, I promise you this, you are the sole ruler of the land of lightning. He said, looking A dead in the eye. Oh, and what is that you want from me then? I asked, confused. I just want 2 things. 1, you surrender to me as the supreme ruler of this world and allying yourself with Suna and supplying them with what they need. Ainz said his piece as A glared at him. Why would I surrender to another tyrant? Ainz saw the lightning coming off the body of the former rakeage and released another sigh. Because I'm not going to rule over your land. What you do your land is your business. You want to launch your plans to build your nation and make it strong while forcing other nations to submit, that is your business. For me, I want assurances. If I call on you, then you are willing to submit to my will. Ainz explained as the lightning disappeared. So I can run everything in lighting, but I have to admit you as the supreme ruler and not oppose you, is that it? I thought about the deal, it was fair in his own right. This meant he would not have to worry about this guy in the land of lightning and at the same time not worrying about him having to pay dues. All he had to do was surrender their nation to him and rule as a smaller king in his own right. Yes, Ainz said, putting a hand out for A to shake. Very well, I can accept these terms. I shook his hand as Ainz turned to Zessie. Get started, he said simply as she smiled. Of course, my lord. Do you want me to kill everyone or just up to the tower somewhere in between? She asked as Ainz thought about it for a second and settled for. Kill to the tower and leave the cage and his secondary allies to me, and A, got it? He asked as she smiled. Of course, Lord Ainz. Within a blur, she was gone, leaving behind a cold chuckle that sent shivers down the spines of the people in the lair. What have you unleashed? I asked in fear as Ainz smiled and his eyes glowed with power. A demon, but that is nothing compared to what the Lightning Diamo is going through, he said calmly as A looked at him confused. Lightning Diamo Palace. By the gods, they are unstoppable. Quick move to the left flank and hit them from there. Too late, the left side has fallen to them. By the gods, they are forcing our dead to rise and turning them against us. They are no longer alive, kill them again to send them to the next life. We are trying, sir, but they are killing us left and right, and the dead are eating the remains of those not revived. Keep steady, me ga. The leading samurai was impaled by a frozen sword and sent crashing to the ground. HMPH full. No one stands against the might of our god. Quick, take the grounds. Kill all that remain. Standing in the courtyard were multicolour-skinned lizard beasts that stood a foot higher than the human soldiers they were fighting. When their god ordered them to fight against this army, they were honored to carry out this order. During the time of conquering the land, their god showed them the way to overcome their problems and quickly made them into a force that was far from many of their pacifist traditions. They were willing to kill no matter who it was, as long as it was for the path of their god. On top of that, they were blessed with the magic to revive the dead and use them against their enemies. The druids had been blessed with the power to control the dead, and thus the power of necromancy was taught to them by Lord Ainz as a means to promote peace among their people. Leading the forces was a brown-scale lizardman with an eye sword and a rugged look with a marking on his stomach and chest. This man was Zeryusu, and he was the leading lizardman in the force. His job was to take the courtyard and eliminate anyone who tried to get close to the gates of the capital. Looking around, he saw that all the guards were dead or begging for their lives before being attacked by the dead and being eaten by them. While this disgusted him, it was war, and he had to put aside his personal feelings to keep the war effort moving forward. Approaching the front of the giant palace, he could feel auras inside, meaning more people were still huddling inside of the palace. His men were trying to penetrate the walls, but it proved useless. Unlike the rest of those of the Guardians, they did not have the power to destroy chakra-enhanced objects. But that was a good thing when they saw their commanding officer coming forward, someone who had earned the respect of the lizardmen. He was a giant light blue, four-arm, beetle monster with pincers. In his hands were 4 different weapons. A katana in his lower arm, a halberd in his top left hand, and his other hands was another katana and a war axe. Out of his back were some ice crystals that sprouted out of his shoulders. Every breath he released was releasing a small ice fog. What seems to be the problem? He took a deep breath of ice and released in front of the lizard men. They had fought this monster years ago and held their own against him, but when his allies came to the aid, they quickly fell to their power and joined to form a more powerful alliance. Plus, with their god teaching the powers of necromancy, they owed him more than anything. At the same time, this warrior was one of honor and frequently challenged them to spars to help them improve in combat and to keep their skills sharp. They were honored to fight him, and Zeryusu felt he was his true superior. Even with his ice sword, he was hard-pressed to fight him on even footing, and if he was honest, it was terrifying to fight him, and he would not want to die by his hand again. Dying sucked, and he saw things he never wanted to see again. The gate is sealed with whatever the power the people of this realm use, and we have no means of breaking it, Zeryusu said as the beetle monster looked at the door. Stand aside. With his halberd pointed at the door, he swung it and forced the gate open. Looking at the people with his 4 blue eyes. Stay out here. If anyone comes, kill them, he ordered. Yes, Lord Cocytus, he said as nodded his head slightly and walked into the building, with each step he made giving off a thud. It would seem coming to this world he had more power than normal, more his ice power increased in potency and raw energy. Just the fact he touched someone with one of the weapons froze their limb in ice and then shattered it seconds later, leaving nothing behind. He was amazed when he used this on someone who opposed him when they attacked him on the way to the palace. Cocytus knew that his mission was of great importance since it was key to taking control of this region in the name of their lord. Plus the army that is formed from this land would aid them in the future in their campaign to destroy Konoha. But until he was sure there was no way they would lose with the minimum casualty possible, they would keep building and picking them off one at a time. Cocytus arrived at the main doors to the throne room, where he felt the presence of the leader of the nation, and the people who served under him were hiding with what was left of their forces. Pushing the door open, he walked into the room, seeing a cowering king sitting on a throne about to piss himself. Scratch that he could smell that he did indeed piss himself. Good grief, you're a ruler of a nation, act like one instead of a child, fool. This seemed to bring the nobles to their senses, and they glared and shouted at him. How dare you attack us? Who do you think you're, monster? Freak, you should be bowing for us to forgive your actions outside our palace walls. I will have you and all your monsters executed. Guards, kill them. Out of the crowd came some shinobi who were sashed as guardians of the Daimyo and samurai who were loyal to their leader. Cocytus sighed, more weaklings, it was not even fun or honorable for him anymore. When the samurai charged him, he slammed the blade point of his halberd into the ground, and ice covered the floor before freezing their feet in place. Soon the ice covered their entire body and they shattered in seconds. Next, he turned to the other warriors who were running through hand signs before shouting. Lighting style. Lightning dragon jutsu. Fire style. Fireball jutsu. Water style. Water dragon jutsu. Wind style. Air cutter jutsu. Earth style. Boulder charge jutsu. All the jutsus were heading toward him, and before they could hit him, he slashed the boulders in half with the swords, froze the dragons, and shattered them, and for the fireball, he took that head on, but had a small layer of ice covering his body to minimize the damage. The explosion was massive, and the men thought they got him until the smoke cleared and revealed he was unharmed. If that is the best that you could do, then I would say my time is wasted on weaklings. In a blur, he was on top of the shinobi and cut one in half with the swords, another impaled on the halberd bottom point, and finally, he swung the war axe and cut one of the shinobi's head open, slicing his brain in the process. The last shinobi pulled out his tanto and charged the monster. In the name of the royal family. He swung and slammed his blade against the monster's skull, but it cracked and broke in half. After swinging the body off the spike of his halberd, he swung the axe part down and cut the man in half, leaving him frozen in 2 ice blocks before shattering against the ground. How boring. He turned to the royal family and approached him with heavy steps. He heard the other nobles running out of the room and running for their lives. But not soon afterward they are attacked by the dead and lizard men, if their screams are anything to go on, and soon are eaten by them. Cocytus ignored them, turned back to the ruler and raised his halberd in the air. Wait, I can give you anything your heart desires. The daimyo screamed, trying to beg for his life. No, you can't. Lord Ainz wants your land, and it shall be his. Without waiting for a comeback, the halberd struck down and cut off his head, leaving a headless corpse on the throne. He froze the body and shattered it before looking at the terrified wife and children. Leave, the lizardman shall let you leave, never return to the palace, for it now belongs to Lord Ainz. He said as the woman bowed her head. Thank you. Soon they took off, not caring about the monster that killed her husband. He was an asshole anyway, and she only stayed with him to keep her children from falling into the same practice he was used to committing on his own. Upon passing the lizard and undead, they let her pass like he said they would, and soon they were going to begin their new lives as people of the land of lighting. Cocytus slammed his halberd into the ground and put his hand to his head, activating the message spell. My lord. Yes, Cocytus? Ainz asked. The palace has been secured and the daimyo is dead. The land is now yours. He reported. Good, now all is left is to eliminate the Raikage and his followers, and soon the land of lightning will be mine, Ainz said. Of course, do you wish for me to join Aura and Marie in their mission in Iowa? Cocytus asked. No, head to wave, there is something there I want you to collect for me, a powerful sword that belonged to an honorable man, and a mask of a person that saved his life, Ainz said as Cocytus nodded, not that Ainz could see it. Of course, my lord, it shall be done. He said, removing his hand, ending the spell before picking his weapon out of the ground. Cocytus walked out of the palace with his halberd in hand and saw the lizard men cleaning up the leftover corpses and turning the undead back into the dead again. We are just cleaning up, Zeryusu said. Good friend, keep this place locked down. Our lord wants it safe until he comes to claim it. Cocytus ordered as he nodded. For our god, Zeryuzu said as Cocytus turned away from him. For my lord. Cocytus left him and proceeded to the land of Wave. If this ord was worth it, he would make sure the master got it as soon as possible. Kumo. Most would expect the Kumo shinobi to have given a great effort to push Zessie back and prevent her from getting to the tower. They would be expecting them to be pushing her more than anything she has ever faced in her life. They expected her to struggle to match their awesome skills. Sadly, that is not the case, for Zessie was yawning in boredom. Seriously, these shinobi were not even giving her a warm-up. She picked small brawls with Albedo and Shaltier that went on longer than this. Oh yeah, and the other women in the tomb. Hell, the maids were stronger than these idiots, and she still defeated them with ease. Sadly, it seemed that these idiots were not strong in their own right and just flinging around elemental stuff, hoping that it would do her in. But thanks to her special side, she is able to cleave them with ease. On top of that, her golden streamed, black and white side with a red gem in the center of the blade was showered in blood from the fallen enemies. For some of them she cut down the middle, killing them while they were slipping apart, others she bisected across the stomach, and others she removed their limbs before slicing them down the middle or beheading the shinobi. Within the hour of getting her order to slaughter the warriors, she had already painted a good amount of the town red. On top of that, she had also managed to make a straight path to the tower and was ready to break in. But she then heard her lord. Zessie, that is enough. Turning her head, she saw her master standing there in his new shinobi outfit. Think Hagoromo's robes. He felt these did the job of covering him as wearing fancy robes, both as a Lich Elder and as a shinobi god. Pulling her mind away from how good he looked in those robes, she bowed. Of course, my lord, head on into the tower. I shall make sure no one bothers your conquest, she said as Ainz nodded his head and patted her black, white, and pink striped hair and proceeded into the tower. I was following him alongside Darui, Yujiro, Samui, and Karui. None of them could believe the level of carnage that this one tiny girl did on her own and wondered what kind of power this guy had to make him capable of reining her in. Upon reaching the middle point of the tower, they ran into a white-haired boy with a lollipop in his mouth, and he was glaring at them with his sword out. Traitors, he said, staring at the Kumo group. Moi, so you are going to stand against me? I asked as Samui and Karui growled at their former teammate. He made it clear when the coup was going on that he was planning on turning them and Yujiro into personal sex slaves for his entertainment. This irritated them, thinking he was better than this, but proved to be another horny man after them. So when they fled, they had to fight him while avoiding detection from the rest of the village, which was not easy, but they did it, but were injured in the process. But this time it was different, with them having a fair chance and the fact that Ainz was going to fight him instead, or at least a damn straight I am. I wanted something that was finally mine. Something that would allow me to finally be my person instead of the idiot everyone thinks I am. Amoy said angrily as Ainz scoffed. You are an idiot though. Amoy turned to Ainz, growling in anger at his words. What? He asked, enraged. You are an idiot. You turned your back on your true friends and allies for some form of perversion, and now expect everyone to understand your desire for grandeur and perversity. You are a sad human being. Ainz said, shaking his head. Shut the fuck up. I'll show you who is a sad human being when I rip your head off and force you to watch the women please me. He gathered lightning into his sword and charged at Ainz with a big swing, but in the end, he dodged the attack. Doing this, he placed his hand out, shifting his eyes quickly to the Rinnegan, and said, Almighty push. Soon the white-haired boy was sent flying into the wall and coughing up blood from the attack. Come on, let's go deal with the Raikage and his followers. The girls and Darui will deal with this idiot. The girls smirked and Darui sweat dropped, seeing them giggling about all the torture they were going to put him through for what he said about them and what he was planning for them. Naruto and Ainz made it to the top of the building and kicked down the door, seeing the cowering Jounin wearing the cage robe shaking at the sight of both of them. Coward, you dare sully that seat with your actions. More, you sully my father's name and title by not having the balls to look me in the eyes. I was covered in lightning armor and ready to attack the boy, only for the boy to shout. Come to bold, take down these traitors. Out of the shadows came masked shinobi to attack them. Ainz acted the fastest and disappeared in a blur, before having his hand impaling 2 bolts through the face, and the others sent crashing to the wall, indenting them there. Ainz turned to them and without waiting he cast illusion with a whisper. Tsukayomi. The Raikage was dragged into a dark illusion where he is tortured for hours when in reality it was only seconds. Feeling the damage done, Ainz turned to A and said to him, "You are free to kill him now. His mind is broken, I'll deal with these guys now." After cleaning his arm from the two corpses, he quickly turned back to the other shinobi in the wall and hit them with twin fire dragons without hand signs. A had grabbed the fool and tossed him out the window and shouted, "Be now." Soon the 8 tails appeared with a tailed beast ball in its mouth and fired before exploding, killing the fool, while A watched in his robes and hat. He took his seat inside. "Good to be in charge again," he said as Ainz smiled. "You remember our deal, right?" Ainz asked as A sighed. "Yeah, you have the full support of the Land of Lightning, and in exchange, I can run the country as necessary, and at the same time anything you need all you have to do is ask." As said as Ainz nodded. "Right, and at the same point, I'll leave some of the creatures around to help maintain control and root out any remaining supporters from the country," Ainz said as A nodded at his words. "Great, thank you for your help, Ainz." Ainz smiled and walked out of the room while planning more for this country and how to make it and soon work to his favor. But that was in the back of his mind because he was off to spring to see Koyuki and his dear Anko again. "Wait for me, my snake charmer, I'm coming for you," he said to himself. Mist. In the middle of a lake was a masked man whose mask resembled an orange swirl, but only with one eye hole. He was wearing a black robe with red clouds on it and looking around for something. Finally he sees it in the form of the 3-tailed beast surfacing from the water. "So you finally show yourself, 3 tails, come to me." He activated his Sharingan, but before he could put the creature under his trance, he had to dodge an attack from behind. Turning his head, he saw that it was a small figure in a torn red cloak, and their face was covered in a white mask. "Sorry there, asshole, but my lord wants that creature and what he wants he gets," the cloaked assailant said. "Who are you, stand in my way?" the orange masked man asked the other person as they removed their mask, showing red eyes and a young girl's face with fangs. "Me? No one other than someone that is considered your superior, scum. You should remember your place beneath me, asshole," she said as the man gritted his teeth. "Name's Toby, bitch," the man said as the girl glared at him. "Evil Eye, I'm your opponent now," she said, putting her mask in place. "While fighting you would be interesting and studying your body as well. I'm busy," Toby said as she smiled. "Oh, you are going to make time now," Evil Eye said, and with a snap of her fingers out of the water came a giant figure that had red eye sockets and red markings going down its chest. Big chubby hands and fingers and radiating power and energy that was out of this world. Before the 3 tails could move, the creature smashed its arms down on the turtle and sent it into the water again. "What the hell? Like I said, Gargantua is going to be beating the turtle into submission." 2 spell circles appeared on her hands and aimed at the masked man. "You, on the other hand, you're going to be too busy dying by my hands. Maybe Master will reward me for killing you," Evil Eye said as Toby growled. "Bring it, bitch, I will show you the power of the Uchiha Elite," Toby shouted in rage before charging her.